Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Robert Adams, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Corporal Hume Cournois. We warmly welcome the family of Private Leslie John Brooks, whose story will be told shortly. We also warmly welcome the delegation representing 1 Recruit Training Unit from the Royal Australian Air Force Base in Wagga Wagga, New South Wales. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family, visitors to the memorial, and students on behalf of Leeming Primary School visiting from Leeming, Western Australia. If you are able, I now invite you to please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. With golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is got by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It could also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us during war and on operations over more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Leslie John Brooks. Leslie Brooks was born to David and Elizabeth Brooks in Hobart on the 17th of May, 1896. He attended the nearby Central State School, and after leaving school, he became a factory laborer. In early 1915, Brooks joined the local militia unit, the 93rd Infantry Regiment. Britain had declared war on Germany in August the previous year, but he was too young to volunteer for overseas service. In August 1915, he volunteered for service in the Australian Imperial Force. Because he was under the age of 21, he sought and received his parents' written consent to serve overseas. Brooks was released from his duties with the militia's 93rd Regiment and moved to Claremont Army Camp north of Hobart. He spent 2 months training there before sailing to Melbourne and training at Broadmeadows Camp for a further month. In November, he boarded the transport ship Orontes and sailed to Egypt. In Egypt, the men trained at the large army camps outside Cairo, and Brooks joined the 12th Australian Infantry Battalion. Brooks was one of the reinforcement who arrived just after the withdrawal of the AIF from Gallipoli, and men like him greatly expanded the force's size. At the end of March 1916, Brooks and the 12th Battalion sailed from Alexandria to Marseille in southern France. From there, they traveled by train north to Somme River sector, where they were soon to enter the trench warfare of the Western Front. Over the following months, the 12th Battalion spent time rotating between frontline trenches and in training behind the lines. While in the trenches, they were subjected to German artillery bombardment and took part in patrols and raids on the enemy's trenches. In July, the battalion began to prepare for an assault on the German-occupied village of Poitiers. Attacking in the middle of the night, the 12th Battalion and other Australian units successfully captured the ruined village and began to consolidate a defensive line within it. German forces counterattacked several times but were held off. The German artillery then began an intensely heavy bombardment of the Australian trenches that lasted for several days. Although it had successfully captured its objectives, the 12th Battalion had suffered 375 men killed and wounded, losing more than one-third of its strength. At the end of July, the unit was relieved and moved behind the lines. Less than a month later, Brooks and the battalion were back in the front line. This time, their objective was a large farmhouse, Mookay Farm, which dominated a ridge running northwest from Poitiers. The farmhouse itself was a ruin, but German forces had incorporated its large cellars into their defensive trench works. On the 19th of August 1916, the 12th Battalion moved into the front lines facing the German positions around Mookay Farm. The men set to work improving the existing trenches and digging new ones. German artillery bombardment the Australian positions constantly, and both sides mounted small-scale attacks and raids. When the 12th Battalion was relieved 3 days later, in the evening of the 22nd of August, Brooks was missing. Exactly what had happened is unclear. Those who were with him believed that he had been killed by shell fire. In March 1917, an official inquiry reviewed the evidence and found that he had been killed in action at some point between the 19th and 22nd of August 1916 at Poitiers. Private Leslie Brooks was 20 years old. At some point, probably in 1917, Brooks' remains were identified and he was buried near where he fell. However, in later fighting, the area changed hands again and the location of his grave was lost. Today, his name is listed on the Boutonneau Memorial in France among more than 10,000 Australian soldiers who died in the First World War and have no known grave. Leslie Brooks' older brother had volunteered for service in the AIF on the same day as Leslie and had also joined the 12th Battalion. Sergeant Ernest Brooks had distinguished himself during the fighting in France in 1918 and was awarded the military medal. He survived the war and returned to Australia in July 1919. Private Leslie John Brooks is listed on the Roll of Honor on my right among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Leslie John Brooks, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemned. At the going down of the sun and in the morning we will remember them. Lest we forget.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poitiers or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, That concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.